We are back. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Calvarowski, and as always, the yin to my yang, Susan Hobson. Susan, how are you?
I am fabulous and firing on all cylinders. It's finally sunny here in Toronto. And oh, yes, we are sitting on the precipice of a long weekend. So I got a little extra octane in my gas tank, but I have to say, it's because I'm so excited to have our guest here today. One of my all-time favorite 2-point leaders of them all. So yeah, let's get this party started.
Let's get this party started. And we have to start off with a quote.
But of course we do.
And so where I wanted to start everyone today is a quote from Buddha. And he says, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again.
Oh, I love that. Tell us why you picked that quote today for our audience, sir.
It's something that has come up a lot recently around this concept of shattering your ego and beginning anew. And there's even a quote out there, I forget who it's from, but it's basically like you can begin anew every morning.
Fresh, clean slate of ice. That's what I loved about hockey the most.
That's right. And that's where I want folks to be at is doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It's all about right now. So with that, we got the managing director at MIQ and special guest, Joe Peters. Joe, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, very well. It's hard to follow such an opening there, Rob.
I'm sure you're going to do a great job. And Joe, for everyone out there who's new to you, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm another Brit that's moved to Canada. There's quite a few of us here now. Moved here about 4 years ago with my now wife. We picked up a dog along the way, little Carlo, and most recently picked up a little Canadian Bubba boy, little Ziggy, has recently joined the family too. So we've got our own little Canadian and feel very at home in Canada. So it's been a great journey for us, and even through the pandemic, and it's been a great place to be. Born and bred in London, so kind of different vibes, London versus Toronto, and we sort of made the most of it and explored Canada, and I feel very at home here.
And Joe, tell our audience a little bit about who you are in the working world at Team MIQ, leading the charge. I kind of just leaked it in the most 2.0 way, which I know we're going to dig into today for our peeps, but just tell our audience a little bit about Team MIQ and the mission that you guys are on in the world.
Yeah, so I've been MD at MIQ Canada for the last year and worked in the business for about the last 4 years. And for those that don't know MIQ, we're like a global business in digital advertising. So we plan, buy, analyze media buys in partnership with ad agencies and brands. And then, more recently, we've just been striving to sort of figure out our mission and our vision for our business, globally, but also like trying to own it here in Canada too. And some of the big areas we focused on is obviously like we want to grow. We want to continue this trajectory of growth that we've had as a business. We've had a really successful time of it since launching in Canada. We just want to continue that. We want to continue to innovate. So innovating what we're delivering for, our own customers and the partners that we work with, and just sort of push the boundaries in what is, a very fast paced industry. But none of that's really been possible, or none of that could be possible without the focus we've had more recently on people. And when we think about our people ambitions and our people vision, we talk about equity, we talk about flexibility, and like probably the most favorite word of all the three that we sort of try and capture our vision is we try and be more human. And so that's been a big focus for us, and just sort of planting that seed at leadership level all the way through the business. And then now, just trying to make actions deliver on that promise. And it's the foundation. Nothing can really happen without each other. We can't grow unless we innovate, and unless we have, great people in our business. We can't deliver for our people unless we're growing and innovating. And it's just all, it's all quite a cyclical thing, living in harmony together.
And maybe before we get more into, I want to pick your brain more about the human aspect, but before we get into that, what is leadership to you?
I think if I one word that's really sort of stands out for me is empowerment. And I think my old MO would have maybe not been as much on the empowerment side of things, but the sort of, give me that, let me help you, I'll do that for you. I had this sort of mindset of like, get it done quicker, I'll do a better job, and in some way I'm helping, the people that I might have the pleasure of leading. And I think that's like very much my old MO. And now this empowerment, not only can these brilliant people around me like achieve great things, they'll do a way better job than me in so many different areas, and just that opportunity for them to grow and develop just sort of flourishes instead of diminishes, with that sense. And so I think about like my role really now is just to make sure that, the team, the people I work with, the broader business, they've got tools, they've got autonomy, they've got resources, they've got training, they know where the business is going, they know how they contribute to that, and they know what success looks like specifically for them. As long as all that's kind of in place, then boom, like, we've got a wonderful sort of functioning team, and just that empowerment sort of breathes through. And I think about empowerment, not just necessarily in the workplace as well, like there's also this empowerment sort of externally, outside of work, the empowerment to embrace your life outside of work. And that's probably also, a big sort of learning curve for me over the past few years as well. And so, leadership is, this empowerment concept, empowering that balance of work and outside of work, and actually being the example of that. So sort of practicing what you preach, because it ain't no good unless you're sort of doing it yourself. And I'd say all of that really with like coming at it from a position of genuinely caring, like caring that the people in your business, the people that you work with, actually get a chance to fulfill their potential. And ultimately, like work, the experience at work is a rewarding thing for them. It's a rewarding part of their life. I think that, that for me has been sort of where I'm trying to take my leadership. And that's the sort of leadership I've kind of garnered from, other leaders around me to sort of try and reinforce too.
I love it. I've been lucky enough to be riding shotgun on this journey that Joe has been on in his leadership for about 3 years, I want to say now, right? When the first time we met. But yeah, so I happen to be privy to what inspired that transition that you just described. But of course, our audience is not, Joe. So would you mind sharing with them what some of that inspiration was for you to go on that journey, first and foremost in your own self-leadership, because that is, of course, where it starts. But then ultimately seeing that, yeah, there was tons of opportunity in your business. You guys were already on this steep growth trajectory, but taking the risk, right, to really step out and start to lead in this way that was maybe kind of a little bit new to you. Will you walk us through a little bit of some of that behind the scenes of that journey?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey, that is for sure. I think when we first met, Susan, you sort of talked 3 years ago, that was probably about 6 months into my time at MIQ.
That's right.
And I'd been acting like a bit of a magpie, or I guess in kind of like a bit of a blue jay, just sort of going around picking up shiny things like little projects and just collecting them to sort of own. I was sort of like lots of autonomy, which is great, but I was just sort of out there just going off and finding tons of projects to get stuck into. And I think when we met, I was pretty frazzled. I was like kind of this kind of achiever performer dichotomy. I was very much kind of looking for my next win, looking for my next, how can I get this satisfaction back of like delivering on something, achieving something. I was pretty frazzled. Like I think I'd had some peaks and troughs through my career, and that's probably one of the sort of troughs of just not being in the right mindset, not being in the right frame of mind to, one, probably deliver effectively, but two, certainly not to lead, people that I might have been managing and the sort of, leading indirectly. And so I'd say, like, when I look at some of the areas that I've been able to address, working in partnership with yourself, Susan, certainly mitigating that burnout, sort of understanding the signs and what I can do personally to sort of help me, look after my mental health and sort of mitigate that kind of approach to burnout. I did a lot of introspection too. My EQ kind of started with actually trying to understand my own mindset and where, why I would feel positive or why I would feel negative, and actually getting to the bottom of some of these things to really understand it and to really sort of affect some change. And I think that's helped me sort of play out some EQ in the workplace as well, and getting a better understanding of where other people may actually be coming from as well.
Totally.
Came with a better ability to sort of bank wins. You talk about that achiever performer. Like I was always just searching for the next win, without necessarily understanding, banking it and like using it to build my confidence as a leader, my confidence as someone that can deliver within the workplace. And then like a really big one we always come back to, like personally, I'm always saying this now, is the progression versus perfection. Definitely have been a perfectionist in the past, and it's just, it just gets in the way of getting shit done ultimately, as an individual. But then, so that's sort of like a lot of the growth areas that I've sort of had the pleasure of going on personally. But then as a business, I guess we've just sort of amplified that to like a wider group of leaders within the business. We've had new leaders join the business. We've had people sort of, promoted through the ranks into positions of leadership. And we didn't want this to be something that lives, up in the
ivory tower.
Exactly. It's bigger than that, and it's become bigger than that over the last few years, especially. And so we've amplified this with lots of one-on-one coaching sessions across the team of, the leadership team, the management team within our business. We've done a lot of group sessions as part of, offsites. We've, in partnership with you, we've created like specific curriculums on bespoke topics like burnout. And how we can sort of mitigate and address some of those things. And, some of those 2.0 strategies are now sort of permeating the entire business. And it's not it's not a top down thing. It's like it's not a bottom up thing. It's just everything, it's become a way of practicing leadership within our business, really.
And for people out there, I feel like our audience sometimes struggles with connecting people strategy to the bottom line and the ROI, right? And making sure that this is actually driving business results. So like, how would you describe that? Because I kind of feel like that investment really paid off for you guys, didn't it? Right? Like we opened up a whole other territory of potential in our people. And so how did that connect to driving results in your business? If you could help us kind of make the case in regards to that piece.
Yeah, I should have mentioned it before actually, but just for me personally, a big like aha moment was actually understanding that I can produce better work. Like I am more productive. I produce better quality work. I actually showcase myself and deliver more to the business when I do all of these, like when I look after my mental health, when I make sure I've got work-life balance, when I'm taking care of myself. My output is actually better, and it's not working harder, it's working smarter. And I think that, you amplify that across the entire business, and it's the same thing. Like we do these things, one, because it does deliver for our people, and it creates that employee experience that we want to sort of raise the bar on. But it produces really, really good outcomes as a business as well. And it's tough in the early stages to put like exact numbers on things. But in time, we're definitely measuring retention. We're definitely measuring like speed with which we can get very high caliber candidates into our business. Yeah, talent, like the search for talent is such a big focus area right now. And just overall productivity of like, when I look at it now, like you can sort of take some broad strokes, but our business has grown by, let's say 25%, but our team has probably only grown by 10 to 15%. So there's certainly some kind of economies there playing out as a business too, and just that productivity, and retaining talent, retaining knowledge within the business, having a growth opportunity for people. We're having like a really big year in terms of our like major sort of financial indicators. I guess some less sort of quantifiable stuff, more sort of qualitative. Q4 is like a big deal for us. It's a big deal for the ad industry. It's like everything just goes loopy in Q4, and there's a lot of money comes into the marketplace, a lot of campaigns that need to be executed.
Yeah. And
basically we need to like deliver on that Q4 essentially with the same team that we kind of delivered Q1, 2, 3, where it might have been running at, 60% capacity.
Mhm.
And so it's in years gone by, it's been this kind of like, oh my God, we're approaching Q4. This is dread. This is going to be horrific. How are we going to get through this? And I think we probably did approach the last Q4 like that. But the experience we had as a business, we felt far more capable of dealing with it as individuals, as teams. And it didn't live up to the fears we'd had. And I think when we look to this Q4 now, we just feel like a really robust business. And I don't think that fear is necessarily there anymore. It's going to be different. It's ultimately, it is more work to do, but we're just way better equipped to handle it now. And that sustainability is just a big thing that's played out for us. Yeah. Sorry, Susan, go on.
I think that's the biggest thing that I see, right? Because I've been working with you guys for several years, and I think sustainability was the big question mark, right? When I first came through the doors at Team MIQ, because we hadn't yet gone on this journey. But coming down the pipeline last year in Q4, what we saw there is our capacity had grown so much, right? Our reserves were so much deeper. I mean, we went through personal adversity in terms of some of the stuff that we were experiencing because of the pandemic and some, challenges with some of our people. And we were so resilient going through all of that. It was just, to me, as the coach watching from the sidelines, I think that was what really stood out to me the most. And that's the piece that I feel like is missing from the equation when everybody's trying to business model this out, right? Is that we don't take our human capacity into account when we're crunching the numbers.
That's it.
Yeah. I love that. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I want to talk about you, Joe. I think it's really interesting. I mean, obviously we love the business numbers and all that stuff. And what I'm really interested in, and a lot of folks struggle with, is the self journey and how that plays out. And for you, you mentioned now that you're doing some of the daily stuff to take care of your mindset and your health, that your productivity, or I guess your efficiency, has been much increased. You want to talk a little bit more about that? How has that played out? And then the other side of it is this journey about your own self-awareness and your own emotional intelligence. How is that playing out in changing how you relate to others?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because that last bit is definitely in work and out of work, actually.
Yeah, totally.
But more on, I guess, the self journey. I would find that I work late nights and work weekends and just work longer hours and just cram lots of meetings I guess at the time in person, big client meetings and other meetings, etc. Trying to lead a team at the same time. And what I found is that I could have 10 meetings in a day, but not really show up to any of them by trying to, you know what I mean, by trying to sort of be present in physicality. I wasn't necessarily present in mind and wasn't able to prepare for meetings. I wasn't able to kind of really prepare in the ways that I'd want to know what I'm doing, but also maybe give a bit of line of sight to whoever I may be speaking to, if it's a client and or someone that I may be working with and leading. And so that I guess the understanding that I can't operate like that. I need time in between. I need thinking time. I need to prepare, and I owe it to the team to actually show up in the meetings. I owe it to them to be present, to really make value of that 30 minutes or that hour session, and have them leave with the direction they need, the support that they need, just being there to kind of be present in that meeting and not thinking about that one that's going to, in 10 minutes, I'm going to be in another meeting. So that was a big thing for me. And then just leaving time outside of work. I think it's been even more paramount with a child now. And I think it kind of forces your hand a little bit too.
Totally.
And working from home has probably helped me establish more boundaries. But even prior to the pandemic, there were these new practices coming in. Like for me, it's like exercise is really important. Not working late evenings, actually getting to spend time with my wife and now my son. They just sort of create a far more sort of rounded life experience that it shows up in work. It shows up in work because I just feel more balanced. I feel like just ready to go. Whereas before I'd have probably just been turning up and being like, I'm not ready to go, but let's do it anyway. Let's get through this week. And it's funny because you can get stuff done and like you do achieve stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not optimal. It's not sustainable. Yeah. It would get to the point personally for me, and this is even prior to moving to Canada. I'd get to Christmas and there's, this sort of 2-week break. I'd be sick, guaranteed. I'd be knockout sick in that two-week period because my body would stop. I didn't have that kind of work, revving the engine to max capacity, and my body would be like, "All right, screw you.
We got no capacity left.
You took advantage of me the last 12 months. You're mine now.
Pay the piper."
So, yeah, exactly. Sorry, Rob. What was the second question again?
Yeah, just how the self-awareness and your emotional intelligence personally plays out with your interactions with everyone else.
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit scientific, bit of a geek, and so I literally just went and started to study the human brain and emotional intelligence. A book that was recommended, maybe even by you, Susan, or certainly by someone. Which is just like the kind of the nuts and bolts of how your brain works. And that for me is kind of like, that's how I like to learn. I want to know exactly what's going on. And it was just like, oh shit, that's why I do that, or that's why I do this. And it's, you just like this, like
the light's on.
The light is on. You've had this dark room. The shit's going on in that you don't really know what's happening. Then you shine a light and you're like, oh my goodness. And you start, it's like you go back to childhood and just how you've been raised. And it's just, just how the times have sort of changed. But, I haven't, if you know what I mean, or I hadn't. And I was working with some real old kind of techniques of, bury emotion and, don't dwell on things. It'll be, stiff upper lip, the classic stiff upper lip sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is definitely like how I'd been sort of raised to deal with stuff. And so just shining a light on all of that just helped me to, grow personally in terms of like my emotional intelligence. And that's like I say, that's played out in work and it's played out outside of work as well. Just like more open conversations with my wife, more like, meaningful. She's polar opposite to me. She's like heart on her sleeve, exactly what she's thinking, good or bad. Whereas I was, obviously the polar opposite of that. But we found ways to sort of meet and convene around, like meaningful connectivity, meaningful communication, where I'm like feel far more comfortable sort of sharing my emotions, etc. And I think it's from a work capacity, it's like it all comes down to vulnerability, and just like showing vulnerability, like most things that people may be going through, you've definitely got the ability to empathize with what they're going through, but you've probably also got a comparable experience in a lot of cases. And I think in the work environment, especially, just like surfacing where I've kind of resonated with some of what they might be going through now, where I've resonated with that in the last 16 years, or maybe even, right now, because there's a lot of worldwide context going on that we're all sort of feeling, we're all sort of part of. And so I think, leading with a bit of vulnerability, creating a safe space. Psych safety has been like big focus for us, an area we want to sort of progress within the business. And I think going on that educational journey helped me to sort of then play it out in the workplace and sort of, change some of my behaviors permanently, almost the rewiring, I think, as you talk about, Susan, of the old brain.
Isn't it so great that you decided to go on all of that journey in preparation for what you did not know was coming down the pipeline in terms of the last 2 years adversity, which we've been talking a lot about on this show. It's why we started this mission here at the Leadership Launchpad Project. We see this as when the world needs this more than ever, navigating all that disruption. But yeah, this is also a theme we've been talking a lot about, is this great resignation thing that has been happening throughout the last 2 years, right? And even up until this point, it's a feeding frenzy for talent right now out there. So we're curious how all this Leadership 2.0 stuff you guys have been doubling down on, yes, even through the adversity, has really shown up towards that, great retention is what we're reframing it to mean or to be called. So what are some of those results that you have seen, or some of the strategies that you've engaged in proactively that have really helped you to retain your people through all of this?
Yeah. Well, we call that one of them, like sort of empowering people to mitigate burnout. Like we were literally losing people permanently to burnout. It was like, I'm burnt out. I don't think I could ever not be burnt out working in this business, working in this role. Therefore,
I'm out.
Yeah. And so addressing that like broadly across the business. Again, with the broader context of everything that's going on in the world, I don't think it's easy for any company right now to sort of, to deal with everything that's going on in work, out of work. But we did really wanted to empower people to sort of mitigate that and just look after the mental health. We put an even bigger focus even on classic things like reward and recognition, personal development, career growth, giving feedback, receiving feedback. It's classic stuff, but it's pretty effective, and you can do better at some of that sort of stuff. I think the flexibility has been a big thing for us. It's made it into our our people vision: flexible, equitable, human. That flexibility piece, it was probably born from future of work and hybrid working circumstances, ability to work from home, ability to work in the office, meaningful connectivity, creating this environment where different people can take what they want, and there's that optionality around, well, actually I'd rather be in the office 5 days a week, and actually I'd rather not be in the office at all ever. That doesn't, but creating a space where people can take what they want and still thrive within the business, still feel included, still get an equitable opportunity within the business. So we've had a lot of focus on that. I'd say it's still early days though. I mean, still kind of figuring it out. But so far it's, we see fantastic talent coming into our business. Our retention levels are higher than we had anticipated. So all signs are good now. And I'm even more positive because I know that there's so much more we can be doing. And it's still in the grand scheme of things, it's really early days.
And the engagement has stayed so high too. I just wanted to add that, because I kind of feel like I've been keeping my eye on that in terms of where we're stacking up according to the industry standards, and our engagement has been really strong through all of this adversity, which is a huge indicator of all of that.
I don't want to jinx it. What we did, we live and breathe a little bit by our engagement survey that goes out every 6 months.
Yeah.
And we hold ourselves accountable to the results.
I know you do. For good and for bad. And we in terms of our people ambitions, we put some big, strong measures in there, which are they play out by how we do in this engagement survey. And it's been trending in the right direction. I feel really good that it will. Like I say, I don't want to jinx it. We don't know the results yet, but I feel really good about how it's going to play out now. It's that gut feeling. I hope I get a really good gut check from the results, but the gut feeling is that we're robust, we're sustainable. People are in a great mindset. We've still got a journey to go on, but we're moving. The trajectory is in the right direction. I second that.
I love it, and it's funny, right? You talk about the nuts and bolts stuff about giving, receiving feedback and praise, and literally I was listening to our future guest, actually, Russ Laraway, yesterday on a podcast, and he was talking about he's actually quantified all of that with Qualtrics, and he found that literally giving praise was one of the number one markers for people to value their manager. And then also that career conversations was the number one predictor of people staying with a company. And so it's like incredible that it's stuff that we kind of knew, but finally we're starting to see actual statistics and data about it, because it's something that I have always wanted, and I know a lot of my technical folks out there like it too.
Absolutely. And I think, when I was talking about the like trying to do 10 meetings in a day, and you've got client meetings mixed in with one-on-ones, those one-on-ones, that is where recognition comes through. That's where feedback comes through. That's where development comes through. And if you're not in a capacity to show up to that, you're just not going to do it. And it just falls by the wayside because of this, other big priority, or just trying to cram too much in. So I think it's like, it's nuts and bolts and it's fundamentals. But I think unless you sort of create that space and time, it just it goes. It doesn't happen anywhere near as much as it should.
Yeah, it's hard to be present when you're burnt. Right? Like, it's hard to lead engagement with your people if you're not engaged. Like, seems to make common sense, right? Again, we know all of these things. So why is it so hard, Joe? Why is it so hard for leaders, especially leaders right now, who are up against it because their talent is walking out the damn door and not looking back over their shoulders? Why is it so hard for them to go on this journey and double down on the people-centric approach?
I guess it's a bit of a leap of faith that people haven't necessarily taken yet. I talked about my mentality was just understanding that results are better, if you can adopt this 2.0 approach to leadership. And it's like, that was a big driver for me. I care deeply about people, but I also care about having like a sustainable business that, because it's like, you can't really deliver on one without the other.
Exactly. You need both.
And so clocking that and like understanding that has just allowed me to sort of just like full steam ahead basically on all of these things that would have been a little bit, I don't know, wishy-washy is not the right term, but they just wouldn't have got prioritized otherwise. And so putting our people ambition up there with our commercial ambition on an equal footing, if not greater, it's like, it's like a foundational thing. But it's been easier to do that as a business and to get, broad alignment with our management team and just the business in general on this approach, because not only does it create this amazing environment for our people, which we're all going to benefit from, like the results are going to be better, and we're going to grow quicker, and we're going to be more sustainable, and we're going to be more future-proof, and we're going to deliver better work, and our clients are going to be, all of these things just happen as a result of it. And so, yeah, for me, clocking that, believing in that, has allowed me to just like, personally go like full steam ahead, and it's just allowed the business to go full steam ahead. I guess, is it a leap of faith, or is it just like spending a bit of time to fully understand it before, before then sort of going full steam ahead? I guess it didn't really feel like a leap of faith for me personally, because I could see how it can play out really positively, and I can see the benefits, and I can take some of the short-term benefits, but actually see like bigger picture of long-term benefits. I think, I guess a few companies and leaders have to go on that journey. Do you know what though? One thing I would say is that our business, it's like 100 people or approaching 100 people. So in the grand scheme of things, it's medium sized, but not huge. And so enacting change within our business maybe has been a little bit easier to do based on our size. But then, the argument is, well, if your business is even bigger, it's even more paramount. You sort of start making some of these changes.
That's exactly where we need to go with that.
And Joe, you sort of did the research and you created the belief. What would you say to leaders out there who haven't done that work yet and are still skeptical that this is the right way to go?
I guess there's no shortage of resources these days, right? It's quite a topic. The fact that we're talking about it now, and the fact that you guys have a business focused on helping leaders sort of make these changes. It's just, I guess, can you amplify the urgency a little bit? it's because the urgency is only increasing. One, because it's good for business, and you'll see winners and losers in a sort of a business sense. But two, if you just look at like the generational changes of who's coming into the workplace, the old way of working, the new way of working, or just the beliefs people come in with. I sort of find myself kind of in the middle. I've had 16 years in the business, and I've certainly had leaders that have been a bit more 1.0 in style. And I've seen more recently, like people coming into the business that it's just not gonna, like, that's not gonna be what they need. It's not gonna create a thriving environment for them. And like, it is the way of life. Like, this generation of people will slowly but surely become the majority. Within our business. And so like, you just need to adapt, and you got to adapt. You might as well adapt sooner rather than later, because it's ultimately better for business. It's better for people in general. And it's just ultimately like what is expected. So yeah, hiring, retaining, you're not going to do that unless you sort of advance in a lot of these areas, like DEI, psych safety, mental health, like just, overall flexibility to allow productivity. It's just, even more paramount, and it's only going to become more so.
Yeah, the more companies pop up like yours, right? Which they are, because of the last 2 years. William was saying this this week on our show, actually, right? Like, this pandemic has actually accelerated us towards the future of work, which I definitely want to dig into a little bit with you. It's so cool, right? We've gone through this transition of trying to figure out, what does work look like today in 2022 after going through all of this working from home stuff. And you guys have created the hybrid model, right? So you guys come together for these significant touch points, right? I think quarterly is what we landed on for that, right? In terms of the Unite Week is what we're calling it. And then, like, for the people who want to be at the office or feel like they need to connect with their teammates live, come on in. This is your day. And those who don't, it's cool. You're still going to be included in what you need to be and what we're doing. So I love it, right? Because to me, it's like, that was the future of work that maybe we were talking about pre-pandemic. So now that's here. What do you see as being the future of work now?
Yeah,
I gotta ask.
This is like the first few months of the pandemic. It was like, in the UK, we'd say it was squeaky bum time, which basically, I don't know if that translates at all here.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
Imagine, I'm going to say a football manager. You know what I mean when I say football, right?
Course.
Like a football manager is sat on the bench, and his team are 2-1 up, and it's like the dying minutes of the game, and it's like squeaky bum time, because it's like, oh, so close, but those nerves.
Yeah, totally.
The nerves that are coming through.
Oh my God, I get it.
So when the pandemic sort of kicked off, it was like, oh my God, what is going to happen here? Squeaky bum time. A lot of unknowns. But you know what, the business dealt with it. Like, globally, the business dealt with it really, really well. And quite quickly, it became clear that we weren't just going to survive, but actually there was a real opportunity to thrive in the circumstance, even with the pandemic sort of fully raging and people working from home, etc. So I guess we took an opportunity just to like push forward with a number of areas that can sort of propel us even further. I sort of called some of them out before, but DEI, psych safety, mental health, and just trying to get a grasp of creating an employee experience that is, all encompassing, this sort of lofty, we've talked about it before, this lofty employee experience, like what lives there? Well, actually everything lives there. So make sense of that one. Well,
God.
But that's
space.
my favorite space, the gray space. And so, trying to make sense of that, and then just like advance, if we can make our employees have a better experience within the business, that's only going to be better, only going to be good for everyone, business and everyone within the business. And so all of these different areas of focus, just trying to like propel us forward to create this sort of longer term sustainability as a business. And part of that is, the kind of hybrid, flexible working scenario. for me personally, I get to feed my son breakfast in the morning. And I get to, instead of a 10-minute tea break, I'll go and hug my son for 10 minutes. Who's going to give that up? Who's going to, the pandemic has just accelerated probably the way things were going to pan out. And we're trying our best to just set ourselves up optimally, because we want everyone to have flexibility and optionality, but we want that whatever you choose, we want you to have that same high caliber employee experience. We want you to feel included. We want you to have an equitable experience within the business. And that's difficult. Not going to lie. That's really hard when you've got different needs that need to be satisfied. And you can only invest so much in lots of these different sorts of things that we might want to try and do. But I feel really good about like where we're heading and just making more sense of it. And knowing like what's important to our people. A big thing that's sort of come up, I don't think it's because of the pandemic necessarily, but probably like work, what's going on in the world in general. And again, just that kind of like generational change in terms of people coming into the workplace. It's just this profit with a purpose.
And tell our people about that. What does that mean? Just
people don't want to just, some people do want to just turn up, get a paycheck, go and support their family. And that's for them is what they need. But more and more we're seeing people just, what's MIQ's take on X, Y, and Z kind of like really meaningful world issue that we can have an impact on in some way, shape or form. When we think about DEI, there's certainly DEI within our workplace and ensuring that we're sort of, pushing the boundaries of diversity, equity and inclusion, specifically as MIQ, the employer. But then there's MIQ, the service provider. We ultimately, we sell a product to customers. And there are DEI considerations in and around advertising. There are certain biases that may play out as it relates to targeting of certain individuals and or messaging that, may be sort of skewed in one way, shape or another and represent some kind of bias. So we're not just trying to like push the boundaries of DEI as it relates to us as an employer, but we're actually trying to move the needle on like the ad industry in general and try and make sure that we can mitigate some of these biases that may have historically shown up or still show up today. And so that represents like a good opportunity for our people to actually get involved in something that can make a positive change. And another area, that's sort of go on about it, but another area is like sustainability in terms of like carbon footprint. Right. Like the ad industry's got a fairly big carbon footprint, as it turns out. And so giving brands and giving agencies and all parties involved, really, just giving them the opportunity to understand their carbon footprint and actually the ability to optimize a more, a less impactful carbon footprint and actually offset some of that carbon footprint. Again, is just like, it's a nice way of combining this, this purpose, something that actually has an impact to the world with the fundamentals of what we do, which is, we run advertising campaigns for clients. So that's been really important. And I think we'll do a lot more of that moving forwards too.
I love it.
The data, actually, funny enough, Joe, the data backs that up too. So there's a recent research out from Adam Grant, who's a professor at UPenn. And he says that when individuals experience the impact of their work, they're 142% more productive, and organizational revenue increases by 172%.
Oh, bam!
Happy days.
So it's not just what you're seeing, it's literally real.
Fast Company came out in January with a huge article on how 2022 is the year of purpose in business. So I think we're obviously super aligned. You guys are trying to change the way the game's being played in the ad industry and from an employee experience perspective, which is kind of game changer, just saying. Just like we're here, right, buddy? Trying to change the way the game of life and business being played forever with this Leadership 2.0 stuff. Joe, before we get you out of here, we have to we got to pull out the big guns. We got to ask you our favorite question of them all. What do you want your legacy to be? The legacy of all this incredibly game-changing work that you're leading in the world right now. What do you want it to be?
Whew.
Woo!
I've thought about this recently and in the past. And where my head's at right now is that like that legacy is seeing the next leaders, like within this business or any other business, seeing the next leaders kind of come through. And it's taking what we might be trying to achieve now and like taking it to the next level, like do a way better job than I have ever done or will ever do. And so for me, it's really just seeing the next rung of leaders just come through and sort of like reflect back. And when I'm on my penguin farm surfing in Portugal somewhere, just be like, yeah, they are smashing it right now. God, this is like, look at what these people are achieving. That would be like the biggest legacy for me. And like in the some of it boils down to like where we've kind of netted out with this like people vision and people mission, equity, flexibility, being more human. Like if I can play a role in that along with all the other fantastic leaders within our business, just play a role with like establishing that so that it doesn't just like peter out over the years, but it's like it's got, it can iterate and it can longevity and it can iterate and it can improve, but it fundamentally lives and is held up by the whole business and every leader within this business. Because we feel really strongly about it, and it's like it came from a position of giving a shit, and it's something we care passionately about. And so if it were to lose steam with inevitable changes that will come in, over the years, that would be a real shame. And I'm committed to, one part of the legacy is definitely being committed to making sure that doesn't happen.
I love it. Joe, you're definitely a 2.0 leader. And for folks out there, if anyone wants to connect with you or find out more about what you're doing or MIQ's doing, where can they find you?
Like LinkedIn is probably about as close to a social network as I get. For whatever reason, didn't join the bandwagon back in the day. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn personally. As a business, like we're across the globe, offices across North America, Europe, and Australia, etc. So yeah, very very reachable, very contactable, and yeah, would love to hear from anyone really.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll drop Joe's LinkedIn in the podcast notes, and for folks out there, you can head over to miq.com for more info there, and we'll drop that in the podcast notes as well. For us, obviously, hit subscribe to Leadership Launchpad Project on your favorite podcast platform, and head on over to elitehighperformance.com for any Leadership 2.0 consulting, coaching, speaking, and all other services. Susan, is there anything you want to leave us with today?
I am just having kind of a moment over here. I got to say, I still remember being out in, I think we were in Prince Edward County in this little meeting room, just talking about a lot of these things, maybe for the first time. And now here we are 3 years later, post-pandemic, describing these types of results. Joe, thank you so much for coming in and helping us make this case for Leadership 2.0. You guys are definitely one of my favorite testimonies. This is why we do what we do, right, buddy?
Well, thank you for having me on, and just all the support over the years of making a lot of this happen. So, thank you, Susan and Rob.
So much fun, Joe. Honestly, so much fun and so fulfilling, which is again why we believe so passionately in the power of Leadership 2.0. Kind of says it all, folks.
And for me, it's something we've heard a few weeks in a row now. Just give a shit. And we heard it from Kim Scott, and we heard it from Joe. And that's where it starts. And it starts with just giving a shit about yourself and turning the light inward on you and learning about yourself. And that's when you can hit the switch. And once you start to see that, you can see it in everyone else around you. And that's where the ripple starts to happen. And Joe did that for himself, and it rippled into his business. And he told us about the results: better retention, higher engagement, more profits, more productivity, and it's only growing. If that wasn't enough, I don't know what is. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. And everyone listening, thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.